Have you ever felt like someone slowly pulled away from you without ever telling you why? No fight, no obvious mistake, just a growing distance you can't quite explain. Their replies get shorter, the conversations feel different, and suddenly you're left wondering, what happened? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes people don't leave because of one big mistake. They leave because of small habits. Habits that seem completely normal from your perspective, but quietly push people away from theirs. And the worst part? Most people will never tell you what those habits are. Today, we're going to explore 7 signs that you might be annoying people without even realizing it. Not because you're a bad person, but because certain behaviors send messages you never intended to send. And sign 4 is the one that catches most people completely off guard. Sign 1. You interrupt without realizing it. Imagine you're telling someone a story. Maybe something exciting happened. Maybe you're talking about a difficult day. You get halfway through your sentence, and suddenly they jump in. Oh, that reminds me of something that happened to me. The conversation continues, but somehow you never get to finish what you were saying. Here's the surprising part. Most people who interrupt aren't trying to be rude. They're excited, engaged. Their brain is moving faster than the conversation. But while it feels like enthusiasm to them, it often feels like dismissal to everyone else. Every interruption sends a subtle message. What I have to say is more important than what you're saying right now, even when that's not the intention. And the problem is that most people won't tell you it bothers them. They'll simply share less, speak less, and slowly stop opening up altogether. The fix is simple. The next time someone finishes speaking, wait 1 second before responding. It may feel awkward at first, but that tiny pause tells people something powerful. I heard you. And sometimes that's all people really want. Sign 2. You give advice when people want understanding. A friend calls you after a bad day. They're frustrated, stressed, maybe even overwhelmed. You listen for a moment and immediately jump into problem solving. You should do this. Have you tried that? Honestly, if I were you, your advice might be helpful. It might even be correct. But somehow they leave the conversation feeling unheard. Why? Because most people aren't looking for solutions first. They're looking for understanding first. Before people want guidance, they want to feel like someone genuinely understands what they're going through. And when advice arrives too quickly, it can feel like their emotions were skipped entirely. The result? People stop coming to you with personal problems. Not because they don't value your opinion, because they don't feel understood. The next time someone opens up to you, try this instead. Before offering advice, ask, do you want my opinion, or do you just need me to listen? That one question can completely change the conversation. Because sometimes people need solutions, but sometimes they just need someone who understands. Sign 3. You are chronically late. Imagine meeting someone at a cafe. You arrive on time. They don't. 5 minutes pass, then 10, then 15. At first, you're not annoyed, you're just waiting. But after a while, the feeling changes. Because the wait starts to feel personal. Here's why. When someone is consistently late, people rarely see it as a scheduling problem. They see it as a respect problem. Whether that's fair or not, that's often how it feels. Every time it happens, the message becomes, my time matters less than yours. And most people won't say that out loud. Instead, they adjust. They lower their expectations. They stop relying on you to be on time. And eventually, they start planning around the habit instead of expecting it to change. The good news? This is one of the easiest habits to fix. Because showing up on time does more than prove you're punctual. It shows people that their time matters too. And that's a message most people never forget. Sign 4. You dominate conversations. This habit is surprisingly common, and the people who do it are usually the last to notice. Because from the inside, it rarely feels like domination. It feels like enthusiasm. Imagine sitting with a friend. You tell a story, then another, then another. The conversation feels interesting, natural. You leave thinking it went great. But the other person spent most of that time listening, waiting for a chance to contribute, waiting for a moment to tell their own story. And that moment never came. Here's the mistake many people make. They assume a great conversation is about having a lot to say. But great conversations aren't built on talking. They're built on exchange. The most charismatic people aren't usually the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who make other people feel interesting. And when one person consistently takes up most of the conversation, something begins to happen. People stop sharing. They give shorter answers. They become less engaged. Not because they dislike you, because they don't feel included. The easiest way to spot this habit is to ask yourself one question. When was the last time you became genuinely curious about the other person? Not just waiting for your turn to speak. Actually curious. Because people rarely remember how many stories you told, but they always remember how you made them feel. And feeling heard is something people never forget. Sign 5. You use your phone while someone is talking. Imagine you're telling someone something important. Maybe you're talking about a problem. Maybe you're sharing good news. And in the middle of the conversation, they glance at their phone. Just for a second. Maybe they even say, "Sorry, keep going, I'm listening." But something has already changed. Because attention isn't just about hearing words. It's about making people feel like they matter. When someone keeps checking their phone, the message often feels like something else is more important right now. Even if that's not what they mean, and the problem is that most people won't call you out for it. They'll simply stop sharing the things that matter. Over time, conversations become shorter, more superficial, less meaningful. The good news is that the solution is simple. When someone is talking to you, put the phone away, not face down on the table. Away, because in a world full of distractions, giving someone your full attention has become surprisingly rare. And rare things tend to be remembered. Sign 6. You make everything about yourself. If a friend tells you they've had a terrible day, before they even finish, you respond, "Oh, I know exactly how you feel. Something similar happened to me." And just like that, the conversation changes direction. Now, to be fair, most people don't do this because they're self-centered. They do it because they're trying to relate. When someone shares an experience, our brain naturally searches for a similar experience of its own. It feels like connection. But to the other person, it can feel like something very different. Instead of feeling heard, they feel interrupted. Instead of feeling understood, they feel overshadowed. And over time, people become less willing to share things that matter. Not because they dislike you, because they don't feel like the conversation stays with them long enough. The next time someone opens up to you, try resisting the urge to tell your own story immediately. Instead, ask one more question. What happened next? How did that make you feel? Give their experience a little more room before bringing in yours. Because sometimes the most powerful way to connect with someone isn't sharing your story. It's making space for theirs. Sign 7. You correct people publicly. Imagine you're about telling a story in a group. Halfway through, someone jumps in and says, "Actually, that's not what happened," or "That's not correct." Maybe they're right. Maybe the correction is completely accurate, but suddenly the conversation doesn't feel the same. Because most people care about more than being right. They care about how they feel. And being corrected in front of others can feel embarrassing, even when the correction is justified. That's why this habit often creates more tension than people realize. Over time, people become more careful around you. They think twice before sharing ideas. They hesitate before speaking, not because they don't respect your knowledge, because they don't want to be embarrassed. The truth is, not every mistake needs an immediate correction. Sometimes preserving the relationship matters more than proving a point. If the correction is important, consider doing it privately. A quick message, a conversation afterward. The information still gets shared. But the other person's dignity stays intact. Because people rarely remember every fact you taught them, but they always remember how you made them feel. Here's something worth remembering. Most relationships don't fall apart because of one huge mistake. They drift apart because of small moments repeated over time. An interruption here, a distraction there, a conversation that became more about us than them. Small habits, almost invisible habits, the kind most people never notice in themselves. And that's what makes them so powerful. The good news is that awareness changes everything. Because once you notice a habit, you can change it. You can listen a little longer. Put the phone away. Ask one more question. Give people a little more space to be heard. And often those small changes have a bigger impact than any grand gesture ever could. So as you think about these 7 signs, don't ask yourself, which one makes me a bad person? Ask yourself, which one can I improve tomorrow? Because the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. And sometimes a single small change is enough to completely transform the way people experience you. Now I'm curious, which sign do you think people struggle with the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, consider sharing it with someone who might benefit from it too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.